on, y'all.
Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, and this is an episode of The Next Level, in which my guest co-host and I discuss the most recent interview of the week of who I consider to be an icon or representing the next generation of icons of the weddings and event industry. And we suss out a few of the key topics and help translate them for you into specific tactical strategies that you can use to bring your business to the next level. And before I introduce today's guest co-host, who I'm so excited about, let me first mention that if you missed last week's interview, it was Rishi Patel, CEO of HMR Designs, an event design and production firm. And Rishi's designed events for numerous major and discerning clients and celebrities. And my guest co-host for that was Jennifer Stein, who we're going to talk about today. Jennifer Stein, editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine. So be sure to check out both last week's interview of Rishi and The Next Level with Jennifer and I talking about Rishi. And so today's guest co-host is Harmony Walton, founder of The Bridal Bar and a luxury destination weddings and honeymoons blog site, Jet Fete, and host of The Bridal Bar Radio, powered by Clear Channel and airing weekly and on demand on iHeartRadio. And Harmony also has over a decade in marketing, consulting, and brand representation experience in the luxury wedding industry. Welcome, Harmony.
Thank you so much for having me back, Andy. It's fun to chat with you again.
Yeah, if you all don't know, if you missed it, Harmony was on the Next Level episode when I talked about part 2 of Colin Cowie's interview. So you should go look for the Next Level about that. You can hear Harmony again. I also interviewed Harmony last year on The Wedding Biz. So be sure to search her name. It was a great conversation. So today's guest, again, who we're going to talk about, and I urge you all to listen to the whole interview. There's so much good information that Harmony and I just can't get into in this one short session. But it's about Jennifer Stein, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine, which can be found on newsstands in all 50 states and 12 countries. Can also find them online. And Jennifer has a wonderful daily blog that you've got to check out. Jennifer has over 19 years of business and publishing experience and was recognized as one of the top 35 entrepreneurs under 35 by Arizona Republic. She also consults and custom publishes. So Harmony, one of the topics that really grabbed me, and I know we even talked a little bit about that when you were on the show, and I'd love to get into it and talk about Jennifer's take on it, was how she had to take a leap, and in a sense, keep taking leaps. I remember this is when she transitioned into starting her own business, but she talked about, I loved the story about how her grandmother taught her, as she said, not to depend on a man, and she needs to purchase her own home, and she did at 22. And she started to think about having this business that she ended up co-founding with her mother, and was thinking to herself how, what's the worst that can happen if this doesn't work? I'm not yet married. I don't have kids. What's the worst that can happen? Worst is I fall on my face and learn a lesson. And she mentioned having pie in the sky ideas like getting rich quickly, which didn't happen, and being very naive about financials and learning mistake after mistake after mistake, right? I'm sure you can relate to that too.
Well, I think Jen and I have very similar stories. She's a dear friend of mine, and we're the same age. We started our businesses the same year, and her and I have really bonded over a lot of those topics, in that there's something kind of beautiful about being young and naive, and you don't know what you don't know. So you're willing to kind of take that leap. And I think that there's a lot of value in that. I don't know that I would have started my business at the age I am now, knowing what I know today, but having that sort of sense of fearlessness and that sense of, okay, if it doesn't work, I just go get a job, and not having quite as many responsibilities as you have 15 or 20 years later in life is really a gift. Now, that also means that you are going to fall on your face a lot more and learn the hard way, but there's certainly some great lessons in that as well. And that's one of the things I really admire about Jen and what she's built with Destination I Do is that resilience. And that, as she spoke in her interview about, Condé Nast publications folding and some of the biggest players in the game going out of business when the market crashed, and she managed to sustain and find a way and pull herself up by her bootstraps and fight through it. And that speaks to, who she is as a person and how great the product is too. I mean, there are certain things that no business could survive, but she found a way to create more value and provide excellent service and give the audience, not only her readers, but her advertisers, something that they needed when those big guys couldn't. And I think that's really a special and unique thing about her as a business owner and her as a person and a woman. And that, some of those lessons she learned from her grandma and her family and her parents. And I know her parents too. And I think they had a lot to do with that awesome upbringing that made her who she is today.
Well, and when you mentioned how both of you started at a really, fairly young age and naive, and it's almost like you don't really know what you have to lose and you go for it. I remember a lot of people don't know this. I sold for IBM and then Lexmark for 16 years. And I had, and I had started my music business in the middle of it, Kushner Entertainment, in like 8 years into it. And, was trying to balance both. And with IBM Lexmark, I was getting really good money. I had benefits and, a very solid Fortune 500 company. And I did have at the time, my daughter was 4 when I took the leap and left and did the music full time. And, I can relate. There definitely was a lot at that time, like you say with yourself, that, I just wasn't really aware of and had to face pretty quickly and sometimes harshly, and then at the same time, I think about how even older, it's almost like we're taking, leaps constantly. A lot of people have talked about on the show reinventing themselves, and how critical that is. And, I like to use the examples, in the music side of like Madonna and Prince. These people who reinvent themselves over and over and over and over again, and how in a sense it kind of doesn't end. I think about some of the older people that I've interviewed who even recently are really completely reevaluating their business. I remember David Stark was talking recently in part 2 about how he had hired a consultant. Now, he's been in business for a long time, hired a consultant to kind of look at a lot of this again, certain aspects of it, and he's making changes. And my God, I took a huge leap. I'm still going strong with the music, but to even start this podcast, a year and a half ago, I didn't know if I could interview. I didn't know how this was going to go. I didn't know if I could get the guests that I did get or the listenership. So it's like that constant need to put yourself out there, right? And how she talked about how often there were times when she would practically be on the floor in a fetal position and would have to, and I think we all could relate to it, but we all don't talk about it a lot. Or we think that the people who have, such a big reputation in this industry don't go through it. No, they do go through it. And she was talking about, we go through it. And she was talking about making the choice to have to stand up again and just hustle a little harder and just get through and make it to that other side. And how the moments of self-doubt, even self-product doubt, come up from time to time. I thought that was interesting too, that she talked about that.
Well, I think to succeed as an entrepreneur, you have to have that resilience because you're so emotionally invested in your business, whatever business it is, that any failure or rejection or, something doesn't go your way on any given day, it is a personal hit and it's a blow. And so you do get into that kind of emotional state at certain times, and you have to be able to kind of look past it and see the brighter future at the end of the road and really pick yourself up and go. And Jen's great at that. And, one thing I think that she didn't speak to in a great detail is her faith. And I think that really guides her, and she knows it's going to work out no matter what door she goes through. And there's a lot of kind of support and comfort in that. And for me as well. And knowing that, all right, because this door closed, a better door for me is going to open. And you don't necessarily know what that is, but it does come. And that also speaks to what you mentioned a moment ago about change and constantly reinventing yourself. And I got a great piece of advice early on in my career that, it's time to change your business. And I said, things are going great. We're at the top of the world. Why would I change? Why fix what isn't broken? And they said, if you lay down on the train tracks, you're going to get run over. This business, and especially now in the world of social media, and at the time there wasn't even social media, but now change happens daily, and you really have to change and reinvent yourself just to keep up because things are so fast paced.
I want to mention that obviously we all want to get as much publicity as we can for our businesses in the wedding and events industry. Well, would you like help in doing so? OFD Consulting is an award-winning publicity agency specializing in the wedding and events industry. They have placed clients in a ton of popular online and print publications, including many of the most well-known brands. OFD Consulting also has a service dedicated entirely to B2B press. And that's if you want to elevate your brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements. And if you're a small business who just wants to get a sense of what's possible, check out the OFD Collective. It is a 3-tier membership with strong educational and coaching opportunities, along with ongoing press leads. Learn more by going to ofdconsulting.com. That's ofdconsulting.com. Harmony, how do you personally deal with this? I mean, you're also someone who is juggling, a lot of things with your business. You're doing very well. People respect you. But like you just said, things are changing constantly. Are you going through, I feel like, it's speaking for myself, I go through these cycles where everything feels real good. And then I start to think, well, wait a minute. Let me, like you say, almost preventative maintenance, and I've noticed a few times when I haven't kept up and something catches me, and then it's like I'm running. Do you feel like you're going through this, periodically, even today at the level you're at in your business?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like once a week, I'm like, okay, I need to hire someone younger than the last hire just to keep up with the social media changes. And, especially in the areas like social media that I feel like are more of a necessary evil than my passion. And they're things that are incredibly valuable to my business, but also to my clients' businesses, but aren't necessarily things that I'm internally passionate about. And I think that anyone is better at things that they love, and so for me, I feel like it's constantly trying to find people to surround myself with that are passionate about the things in my business that I'm not passionate in. And, I've actually kind of changed my business model internally a little bit, whereas I used to hire a lot of those people and bring them in-house and say, okay, this is where we need to change, but I don't want to change, so I'm going to put that on you. And instead, I've actually shifted to a slightly different model where I'm hiring a lot of independent contractors and freelancers to do that work so that I don't feel like I'm completely taking it off my plate and just sort of washing my hands of it and giving it to an employee and hoping it gets done right and then getting frustrated if it doesn't. But I'm more collaborative now with freelancers who are creating change within my business, but I'm still overseeing it because it's, project work that I still have to be very much involved in. And that has allowed my business in the past, I'd say, year to change and grow and offer better and more service for our clients, but in areas that we have to evolve in, but aren't necessarily the core places that I wish we could evolve in.
God, I could resonate with so much of what you're saying. I'm doing the same thing. I just actually recently got a new, again, same thing, not in-house, but more like a consultant to help me better understand social media and marketing. And I'm so excited. I mean, this person, like you're saying, this is all they do. And they have such a passion for it. And the idea is to take this thing, even with the podcast, to a whole nother level. I mean, I'm getting more excited. I'm getting more interested. But yeah, to reach out and get some other people out there, like you say, who are freelancers, I think it's really important to stay on top of it. I can gather that. Well, another topic, too, that came up was I asked Jen, how do you determine if a certain advertising opportunity is worth the investment? I mean, something I know with me, with my music business, Kushner Entertainment, I have to think about that real seriously. It's not quite as apropos with the podcast. It could, but with the music, I face it for years. And, how do I decide when and where and how much money, what to budget, to invest in this kind of thing? And so Jen, being the editor-in-chief at Destination I Do magazine, had some great advice. She was talking about how, well, first of all, you got to really understand your own client, and the media outlet's client. And is there a connection, a synergy, because, I think what kind of in between the lines was that a lot of us will simply think, okay, this is a major, publication or online, whatever it is, and I got to put something out there. But her point is to research it and really figure out where is the right fit, like who is our client and who is our competitors. And she made an interesting point here that if the competitors are getting a lot of business, if we know that, and they have an ad in a certain place and they have the same audience of ours, it may seem obvious, but not everyone's thinking about it. Place one there, maybe not in the same spread, but invest where someone else is getting a lot of leads.
Well, I think advertising is such a personal thing. And Jen spoke to a lot of the great ways you can kind of weed out the clutter and find the value for you. But, it's funny. She mentioned, it's okay to advertise where your competitors are. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But it's also okay to advertise where your competitors aren't. I think that, we own a destination wedding blog called JetFet. And something that kind of blows my mind is we get a lot of inquiries for advertising, and they don't ask any numbers. They don't ask any traffic. They don't ask any stats. They don't ask about data. And I think you really have to just fully educate yourself about everything. So they may have a very niche market of only destination weddings. And so our destination wedding blog could be perfect for them. However, if there's no one looking at the site, the value probably isn't going to be there. Now, obviously we have people looking at our site, but they don't necessarily know that because they haven't asked. So I think it's kind of twofold. One, it's ask to see the data and the demographics and the specs of the outlet. That's a totally fair question. And then two, it's looking, as to Jen's point, as to what's right for you. So you may look at Style Me Pretty and it may have the most enormous numbers compared to any other advertising outlet online that you're looking at. And so you may assume that that's right for you. But volume doesn't necessarily equal a right fit for your business. If you are a destination wedding company and you're exclusively looking for destination wedding couples, and a site like Style Me Pretty is perhaps majority domestic weddings and not destination, then maybe that volume isn't what you should be targeting. Now, obviously, Style Me Pretty is wonderful and has great opportunities for a lot of great brands, but you really have to kind of figure out, is that volume there to get you the traffic and the eyes that you need? And is that volume the right volume for what you're looking for? Is the budget there? Is the budget not there? Is the regional aspect there? Or does that matter to you? And then looking at, I think to Jen's point, looking at where your competitors are advertising is a good place to start, because if someone is wildly successful and they are getting a lot of business, knowing where some of that business may be coming from may help you kind of weed out the clutter, because there are so many options out there. And it can be overwhelming as to where to start and where to spend your money, because we all have a limited marketing budget. The sky isn't the limit for any one of us in terms of what we're going to spend on advertising. So being smart, and then also kind of get yourself out of the wedding business. Jen mentioned some of the books that she's read and how those business books that had nothing to do with the wedding industry really helped her craft her message and come up with her business model for the wedding industry. And I think a lot of those principles are really valuable, and we don't touch on them enough as wedding business owners. We think that our market is so unique and different that regular business rules don't apply. And while I agree with that sometimes, I don't agree with that other times. There's a kind of a common rule, that 70-30 rule, where if you've got 70% of your advertising in dollars in places that you've advertised in before, and to be successful and you're tracking those numbers, then take 30% of your budget in this coming year and test it in other ways. Test it in other outlets, in other markets, spend it differently. And that way, you've got your core advertising that is going to hopefully continue to work for you, because it has in the past, but you're also continuing to evolve and change and investing 30% in new and different ways, because maybe something out there is going to be, the jackpot for you and you just haven't tried it yet. But I don't encourage people to put all their eggs in one new basket, because that could turn out to be the basket that you don't want to be in.
God, such great advice. Just before we wrap up, I remember too, and related to a lot of what you're saying, Jen was also talking about to determine if the ROI does fit the price. And she was in the sense of, how many events do you need to book in order to cover it? Is it something that you feel you can easily do if you get a couple leads and, it pays off? And so I thought that was interesting too, is to really give thought to that. So, well, I want to thank everyone for listening. Harmony, thank you so much. You always have such great things to say. Thanks for being on the show and helping.
Are you kidding? Thank you. It's an honor to talk about Jennifer Stein. I think she is a visionary, and I just love that her magazine is one of the few that has sustained and survived and is going strong and will continue to. So thank you for having me on to talk about her.
Yeah, great. Sure. And as far as finding out more about Jennifer, her website is destinationido.com. Her Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest handles are Destination I Do. You could find her on Facebook at Destination I Do Mag. All of this will be in the show notes on the Wedding Biz website, or scroll on your cell phone podcast app. You'll see it all there. Also, the blog, which is so well worth checking out, is destinationIdo.com/blog. I also want to give Harmony Walton's website and handle. She is the founder of the Bridal Bar and so much more. You've got to check out her site. Wonderful, wonderful information and consultant. You can find everything about Harmony at bridalbar.com, and also her social media handle is Bridal Bar. And so, again, want to thank everyone for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notifications, and share it and review it. And we will see you all next week on The Wedding Biz.